The stranger rode into Bonanza, Colorado on a Tuesday morning in late August of 1882. His horse lathered with sweat, and his foreman bleeding all over the saddle horn. And Clara Greenfield knew before he even opened his mouth that this day would split her life clean in two. She had been hanging laundry behind her modest cabin at the edge of town when she heard the commotion, the desperate shouts for help that sent people scattering like startled chickens. Her hands stilled on the wet sheet she had been pinning, her eyes narrowing as she watched the tall cowboy half drag, half carry an unconscious man toward the doctor's office, only to find it locked tight with a note tacked to the door. Doc Hendricks had ridden out to the mining camp 30 miles north, would not be back until Thursday at the earliest. Clara did not hesitate. She dropped the laundry basket and hurried forward, her practical gray skirt swishing around her ankles, her dark blonde hair escaping its pins in the mountain breeze. "Bring him here," she called out, her voice cutting through the confusion. The cowboy turned, and she got her first real look at him, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair curling at his collar, eyes the color of storm clouds fixed on her with desperate hope and skepticism warring in their depths. "Madam, this man needs a doctor," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion and worry. "He's been hurt bad. Rattlesnake spooked the herd and a longhorn gored his arm clean through. He has been bleeding for hours." "I can see that," Clara said, moving closer to examine the injured man. She had to swallow hard at the sight of the wound, deep and ragged, the flesh torn and already showing signs of infection around the edges. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage, dripping steadily onto the dirt. "I am not a doctor, but I know herbs and healing. Doc Hendricks himself has said I have a gift for it. If you want your foreman to keep that arm, you will bring him to my cabin now." The cowboy stared at her for a long moment, jaw working as he weighed his options. His foreman's face had gone gray, his breathing shallow and rapid. Clara could see the fever already setting in, the way the man's body trembled despite the August heat. There was no time for debate. "What is your name?" she asked the cowboy directly. "Isaac Sullivan," he said. "This here is Tom Brewster, my foreman. We run cattle up in the high country, bringing a herd down to sell. Miss, I cannot lose him. He has a wife and 3 children back home." "Then stop wasting time and follow me," Clara said firmly, already turning toward her cabin. She heard Isaac's boots behind her, the scuff of the foreman's dragging feet. Her heart hammered in her chest, not from fear but from the focused determination that always seized her when faced with someone in need. Her father had been a physician back in Boston, and though women were not permitted to study medicine formally, he had taught her everything he could before consumption took him when she was 17. That had been 7 years ago, and she had been out west for 5 of them, having followed her brother to Colorado only to lose him to a mining accident within a year. She had stayed, unable to face returning east to the suffocating expectations of proper Boston society, and had built a life here on the edge of civilization, supporting herself with her knowledge of medicinal plants and her skilled hands. Inside her cabin, Clara swept everything off her kitchen table with one efficient motion. "Put him here," she ordered, and Isaac obeyed, laying Tom down as gently as he could. The foreman groaned, consciousness flickering. "I need you to hold him still," Clara told Isaac. "This is going to hurt him, and he will fight." She moved to her shelves, her hands steady as she selected jars and bundles of dried herbs. Comfrey root for deep wounds, golden seal to fight infection, yarrow to stop bleeding, willow bark for pain and fever. She had learned which plants grew in these mountains, which could be cultivated in her carefully tended garden, which had to be gathered from the wild places. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, crushing and mixing, heating water on her stove, preparing poultices and tinctures. Isaac watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness, but she forced herself to ignore it. Tom was what mattered now. She cut away the ruined sleeve of his shirt, exposing the full extent of the damage. The horn had punched through the muscle of his upper arm, tearing flesh and possibly nicking bone. It was the kind of injury that could easily turn gangrenous, that could kill a man or at the very least cost him his arm. "Hold him," she repeated, and Isaac braced his hands on Tom's shoulders. Clara began to clean the wound with hot water and soap, as thorough as her father had taught her to be. Tom screamed, his body arching off the table, and Isaac held him down with the kind of strength that came from years of working cattle and land. Sweat beaded on Clara's forehead as she worked, irrigating the wound again and again until she was satisfied no dirt or debris remained. Then came the golden seal wash, the bright yellow powder mixed with water, and she could see Isaac wince at his foreman's cries. "Is he going to die?" Isaac asked, his voice low and tight. "Not if I can help it," Clara said. She packed the wound with comfrey root paste and yarrow, her fingers gentle but sure, then bandaged it with clean linen strips. She prepared a strong infusion of willow bark and managed to get some down Tom's throat despite his semi-conscious state. "The fever will get worse before it gets better. He needs to stay here where I can watch him. Change the poultices every few hours. Make sure infection does not set in." Isaac nodded slowly. "I will stay with him." "You look ready to fall over yourself," Clara observed. Now that the immediate crisis had passed, she could see the exhaustion written in every line of Isaac's body, the way his shoulders sagged, the shadows under his eyes. "When did you last eat or sleep?" "Yesterday morning," he admitted. "Maybe the morning before. We have been driving hard, trying to get the herd to market before the weather turns." Clara made a decision. "There is a spare room. It is small, but the bed is clean. You will rest, eat something, and then you can sit with your foreman. You will be no good to him if you collapse." She expected argument, but Isaac simply nodded again, the fight gone out of him now that someone else had taken charge. Clara realized he had been carrying the weight of this crisis alone, making all the decisions, and the relief of sharing that burden was palpable. She heated up stew from the pot that always seemed to be simmering on her stove, thick with vegetables from her garden and venison from a recent trade with one of the miners. Isaac ate mechanically, barely tasting it, his eyes constantly drifting back to Tom's pale, sweating face. "He is strong," Clara said quietly, "and you got him here in time. Those things matter." "He has been with me since the beginning," Isaac said. "When I bought my first 100 head of cattle 5 years ago, Tom was the first man I hired. He taught me most of what I know about running a ranch. His wife Mary makes the best apple pie in 3 counties. His oldest boy just turned 10. He set down his spoon, his hands shaking slightly. "I cannot go back and tell them he died." "You will not have to," Clara said with more confidence than she felt. She had seen men die from wounds less severe, had seen infection take hold with terrifying speed. But she had also seen the body's remarkable ability to heal when given the right help, and she would give Tom Brewster every chance she had. Isaac did sleep, though fitfully, and Clara sat vigil through the afternoon and evening, checking Tom's wound, changing the poultices, spooning willow bark tea and water into his mouth whenever he was lucid enough to swallow. The fever climbed as darkness fell, and she bathed his face and chest with cool water, murmuring reassurances she was not sure he could hear. Isaac appeared in the doorway around midnight, hair rumpled, shirt unbuttoned, his eyes immediately finding his foreman. "How is he?" "Holding his own," Clara said. "The fever peaked about an hour ago. If it starts to come down by morning, that will be a good sign. Isaac pulled up a chair on the opposite side of the table. Tell me about these herbs you are using. I have seen plenty of injuries in my time, but nothing like what you are doing. So Clara talked, keeping her voice low and steady, explaining how comfrey helped tissue regenerate, how golden seal fought infection, how yarrow had been used by warriors for centuries to stanch bleeding. She told him about learning from her father, about the books she still studied by candlelight, about the native plants she had learned to recognize and harvest. Isaac listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly paying attention, not just making conversation to pass the time. "Why are you here alone?" he asked eventually. "A woman with your skills could have a practice anywhere, could make a good living." "Women cannot be doctors," Clara said with a trace of bitterness. "Medical schools will not admit us. I could assist a physician, perhaps, in some progressive city, but I would always be subordinate, my knowledge dismissed because of my sex. Here, people care less about propriety and more about results. Here, when Doc Hendricks is unavailable, they come to me. I have delivered babies, set broken bones, treated fevers and infections. I cannot call myself a doctor, but I can do the work regardless." "That does not seem fair," Isaac said quietly. Clara laughed, a soft, rueful sound. "Very little in this world is fair, Mr. Sullivan. We work with what we are given." They fell into a companionable silence, both watching Tom's chest rise and fall. Clara found herself stealing glances at Isaac when she thought he was not looking, noting the strong line of his jaw, the calluses on his hands, the way concern for his Foreman softened features that might otherwise seem harsh. There was something solid about him, something reliable, and she realized with a start that she was drawn to him in a way she had not been drawn to anyone in a long time. By dawn, Tom's fever had indeed broken. He woke briefly, confused and in pain, but lucid enough to recognize Isaac and to drink the broth Clara offered. She cleaned and redressed his wound, pleased to see that the angry redness had not spread, that the flesh looked healthier despite the trauma. Isaac sagged in his chair with relief so profound it seemed to turn his bones to water. "You saved his life," he said to Clara, his gray eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I do not know how to thank you." "Pay me what you would have paid Doc Hendricks," Clara said practically, though her cheeks warmed under his gaze. "And help me get him to the bed in the spare room so he can recover properly." They moved Tom together, and Clara showed Isaac how to change the poultices, what signs to watch for that might indicate worsening infection. "He will need to stay quiet for at least a week," she said. "Maybe 2. That wound was deep, and if he tears it open doing something foolish, all this work will be for nothing." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, calculation clear on his face. "I need to get back to the herd. My other men are good, but they need direction. But I cannot leave Tom here without paying you properly for his care, and I do not have that kind of cash on me right now, not until the herd sells." "I trust you will pay," Clara said. "Take care of your business. I will take care of your foreman." "No," Isaac said slowly, an idea clearly forming. "No, there has to be something I can do, some way to properly repay this debt." His eyes moved around her cabin, taking in details she had become blind to through familiarity. The way the floorboards were slightly warped, how the door did not quite hang straight, the small size of her pantry. "You are a healer. You use herbs. You must need somewhere to store them properly, somewhere cool and dark where they will keep through the winter." Clara blinked. "I manage well enough." "But you could do better," Isaac pressed. "You saved Tom's arm, maybe his life. Let me build you a root cellar. A proper one, dug deep, with good drainage and ventilation. Somewhere you can store herbs and medicines, food for the winter, everything you need. I am good with my hands, and I owe you more than money can repay." She should have said no. Should have insisted on simple payment and sent him on his way. But the offer touched something deep inside her, some place that was tired of managing alone, tired of making do. A root cellar would make such a difference, would expand what she could do, what she could store and prepare. And the thought of Isaac Sullivan working on her property, of seeing him again, made her pulse quicken in a way she could not quite deny. "This week?" she asked. "You would build it this week?" "Tom needs to stay here recovering anyway," Isaac pointed out. "I will check on the herd, make sure my men have things under control, and then I will come back and build you the finest root cellar in Bonanza. It is the least I can do." So it was settled. Isaac rode out that morning, and Clara tended to Tom through the day, changing his dressings, feeding him strengthening broths and herbal teas. He was a kind man, weathered and tough as leather, and he watched her with shrewd eyes that saw more than she was comfortable with. "Boss is sweet on you," he said on the second day, when he was feeling well enough to be conversational. Clara nearly dropped the bowl of stew she was bringing him. "I beg your pardon, Isaac," Tom clarified, a hint of amusement in his voice despite his pallor. "He could not stop talking about you on the ride back to camp, about how capable you were, how steady your hands, how you took charge of the situation. I have known that man for 5 years, and I have never heard him talk about a woman that way." "He was grateful," Clara said firmly, feeling her face heat. "That is all." "If you say so, miss," Tom said, but his smile suggested he did not believe her for a moment. Isaac returned on Thursday, riding in with the sunset painting the sky gold and crimson behind him. He brought supplies, lumber and tools loaded on a pack horse, and Clara felt something in her chest squeeze tight at the sight. He checked on Tom first, and she saw the relief in his eyes when he found his foreman sitting up, eating solid food, color returning to his face. "You are a miracle worker," Isaac told Clara quietly. "I am a healer," she corrected. "The body does the real work. I just give it the best chance possible." "Still," he said, and his hand brushed hers just for a moment, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. He began work on the root cellar the next morning, Friday, choosing a spot on the north side of her cabin where the ground stayed coolest. Clara watched from her window as he marked out the dimensions, began to dig, his shoulders flexing under his shirt with each shovelful of earth. She forced herself to focus on her work, grinding herbs, preparing tinctures, checking on Tom, but her eyes kept drifting back to Isaac's form. By noon the heat was fierce, and she brought him water and cold biscuits left over from breakfast. He accepted gratefully, wiping sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of dirt behind. Without thinking, Clara reached up and brushed it away with her thumb, then froze, realizing what she had done. Isaac's eyes widened, his gaze locking on hers, and for a long moment neither of them moved. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice rough. Clara retreated to the safety of her cabin, heart pounding. She was being foolish. Isaac Sullivan was a rancher, a man with cattle and land and responsibilities. She was a woman alone, living on the margins of respectability, tolerated because she was useful but never fully accepted. There was no future in whatever this was that hummed between them. But that did not stop her from preparing a good dinner, from frying chicken and making biscuits, from putting on a clean dress and brushing out her hair before calling Isaac in to eat. Tom joined them at the table, moving slowly but steadily improving, and the three of them shared a meal that felt almost like family. They talked about the ranch, about Isaac's plans to expand his herd, about the market prices for beef. Tom told stories about his children, about his wife's terrible singing voice and her excellent cooking. Isaac talked about growing up in Kansas, about coming west with nothing but determination and a borrowed stake, about building something from dirt and dreams. "What about you, Miss Greenfield?" Isaac asked. "What made you come to Colorado?" So Clara told them about Boston, about her father and her brother, about the suffocating expectations of a life she could not bear to live. She told them about arriving in Bonanza and finding a place that, while harsh and unforgiving in many ways, at least allowed her to use her skills, to be herself, without constant judgment. She did not tell them about the loneliness, about nights when the silence of her cabin felt like it would swallow her whole, about the longing for someone to share her life with that she usually kept locked away. But something in Isaac's eyes suggested he understood anyway. Saturday, he dug deeper, and Clara found excuses to be outside, weeding her garden, hanging laundry, anything to be near where he worked. They talked in fragments, conversations interrupted by labor but picked up again seamlessly. She learned that he was 26, 2 years older than her, that he had been engaged once back in Kansas, but the woman had refused to follow him west. She learned that he loved the land with a passion that bordered on worship, that he dreamed of building something lasting, something he could pass on to children he hoped to have someday. "Assuming I ever meet a woman foolish enough to marry a cowboy," he added with a self-deprecating smile. "It would not be foolish," Clara said quietly. "You are a good man, Isaac Sullivan. Any woman would be lucky to have you." He stopped digging, climbed out of the deepening hole, stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Any woman?" he asked softly. Clara's breath caught. She should step back, should maintain propriety, should protect herself. Instead, she held his gaze and said, "Yes, any woman." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were rough with calluses, but infinitely gentle. "What if there is only one woman I am interested in?" he asked. "What if I have been thinking about her every moment since I rode into this town? What if I lie awake at night wondering if she might possibly feel the same way?" "Then he should probably speak plainly," Clara managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Clara," Isaac said, and her name on his lips felt like a prayer. "I know this is fast. I know we have only just met, but I feel like I have been waiting for you my whole life without knowing it. You are brilliant and capable and strong, and I want to know everything about you. I want to hear your thoughts on medicine and herbs and whatever else fills that remarkable mind. I want to make you smile, to earn your trust, to build you 100 root cellars if that is what it takes." "One will suffice," Clara said, and then, because she was done with being careful and protected, she added, "But I would not object to your company while you build it." Isaac's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He took her hand, raised it to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that sent shivers racing through her body. "I will be the best company you have ever had," he promised. Sunday he framed out the cellar walls, setting timber braces that would hold back the earth. Clara sat nearby, supposedly mending, but mostly just watching him work and talking. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories and dreams and fears. She told him about the new medical text she had ordered from Denver, about her hope to maybe one day open a proper clinic where women could come for care without shame. He told her about wanting to own his ranch outright, about the careful calculations of profit and loss that kept him awake at night, about the satisfaction of watching cattle thrive under his care. Tom watched them both with undisguised amusement, and on Sunday evening when Isaac had gone to wash up, the foreman said to Clara, "You should know he is serious about you. Isaac does not trifle with women, never has. If he is courting you, he is thinking about forever." "I barely know him," Clara protested weakly. "Sometimes that is all it takes," Tom said. I knew Mary was the one for me within a week of meeting her. 22 years we have been married now, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. When you know, you know. Did she know? Clara asked herself that night, lying in her bed, listening to Isaac's breathing in the spare room where he had insisted on sleeping to give Tom the more comfortable bed. Her heart said yes, said she had known from the moment he looked at her with desperate hope in the street. But her head counseled caution, reminded her of heartbreak and disappointment, of the risks of giving her heart to a man who could leave, who could hurt her. But Isaac did not feel like a risk. He felt like coming home. Monday, he built the stairs leading down into the cellar, each step carefully measured and secured. Clara prepared preserves, her kitchen fragrant with cooking fruit, and Isaac came in periodically to steal tastes and make her laugh with his exaggerated reactions. Tom was well enough now to sit outside, and he occupied himself with small tasks, mending tack that Isaac had brought from camp, carefully staying out of the way but providing a chaperone that preserved Clara's reputation. "You think about what you will store down there?" Isaac asked as they ate dinner, gesturing toward the cellar taking shape outside. "Herbs, definitely," Clara said. "Roots and barks that need to stay cool. And food, of course. Potatoes, carrots, apples if I can get them, maybe cured meats." She paused, then added softly, "It will change what I can do. Let me prepare better medicines, help more people. It is an extraordinary gift, Isaac. You saved my foreman's life," he said simply. "This does not come close to repaying that, but it is a start." Tuesday, he installed the door, hung on leather hinges he had crafted himself, and began work on the ventilation system, cutting small shafts that would allow air to circulate without letting in too much moisture or pests. Clara marveled at the precision of his work, the way he measured twice and cut once, the care he took with every detail. This was not a man who did things halfway. Whatever he committed to, he committed fully. That evening, as the sun set in a glory of purple and orange, they sat on her porch together, the work nearly complete. Tom had gone to bed early, his arm healing well but still leaving him tired. Clara and Isaac sat side by side, not quite touching, both acutely aware of the space between them. "I have to take the herd to market soon," Isaac said quietly. "We are already later than I planned, thanks to Tom's injury, but I do not want to leave without knowing when I will see you again." Clara's throat tightened. She had known this was coming, had known he could not stay indefinitely. But the thought of him leaving filled her with a fear she had not expected. "How long will you be gone?" 2 weeks, maybe 3, he said. "I have to drive the herd to Denver, negotiate prices, make sure my men are paid. Tom will stay here until his arm is stronger if you will have him. And then I will come back." He turned to face her fully. "Clara, I will come back, not just to collect Tom, but because I need to see you again. Because these past few days have been the best of my life and I want more of them. I want all of them if you will have me." "Isaac," she breathed, and then his hand was cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin, and she leaned into the touch like a flower to sunlight. "May I kiss you?" he asked, and she loved him for asking, for respecting her enough to request permission. "Yes," she whispered, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning at first, then deeper as she responded, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. He kissed like he built, with focus and care and complete commitment, and Clara felt herself melting into him, into the promise of what they could be together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you, Clara Greenfield," he said. "If you will have me. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but someday. I am going to build you a house and fill it with children and love you until my last breath. That is a promise." "That is quite a promise to make to a woman you have known for less than a week," Clara said, but she was smiling, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. When you know, Isaac said, echoing Tom's words. Say you will wait for me. Say you will give me a chance to prove I mean every word. I will wait, Clara promised. Come back to me, Isaac Sullivan. Wednesday morning he finished the root cellar, adding final touches and making sure everything was perfect. Clara climbed down into it, marveling at the cool, dry space, at the shelves he had built into the walls, at the solid craftsmanship of every detail. She turned to find Isaac watching her from the entrance, the morning light behind him. "It is perfect," she said. "Thank you." "The first of many things I intend to build for you," he replied. He left that afternoon, taking Tom with him despite Clara's protests that the foreman could stay longer. "He is well enough to travel slow," Isaac said, "and his wife has been without him long enough. But I will be back, Clara. Count on it." She watched him ride away. Tom mounted carefully beside him and felt the absence like a physical ache, but she also felt hope, bright and fierce and sustaining. Isaac Sullivan was a man of his word. He would be back. The weeks that followed were the longest of Clara's life. She threw herself into work, organizing her new root cellar, treating patients who came to her door, gathering herbs from the mountains as autumn began to paint the aspens gold. She thought about Isaac constantly, wondered how the cattle drive was going, whether he was safe, whether he was thinking of her too. Letters began to arrive, brought by the weekly mail coach, and Clara treasured each one. Isaac wrote about the drive, about stubborn cattle and difficult river crossings, about the satisfaction of a good sale in Denver. But mostly he wrote about missing her, about counting the days until he could return, about plans and dreams that always seemed to include her. She wrote back, telling him about her patience, about the garden harvest, about how she used the root cellar every day and thought of him. She wrote about the way Bonanza looked in autumn, about early snow on the high peaks, about lonely evenings when she wished he was there to talk to. She was more honest in her letters than she had planned to be, but something about the distance made it easier to reveal her heart. 6 weeks after Isaac left, Clara was working in her garden when she heard hoofbeats. She looked up, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and felt her heart leap as she recognized the rider. Isaac swung down from his horse before it had fully stopped, and then she was running, propriety forgotten, and he caught her in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure joy. "You came back," she said unnecessarily, her hands framing his face. "I promised," he said, and kissed her soundly, right there in full view of anyone who cared to look. "God, I missed you. Your letters kept me sane, but they were not enough. I need the real thing." He had brought gifts, practical things that showed how well he was coming to know her. Medical supplies that were hard to get in Bonanza, high-quality scissors and tweezers and bandages. A new mortar and pestle made of marble. Books on herbal medicine that must have cost a small fortune. And for Clara herself, a necklace of simple silver, a pendant in the shape of a leaf. "It reminded me of you," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "Growing things, healing things." She kissed him again, slower this time, savoring it. "How long can you stay?" "As long as you will have me," he said. "I have good men running the ranch. Tom is back and recovered, sends his regards and Mary's apple pie. Winter is coming and I do not have to be back until spring calving, so I thought maybe I could stay here, court you properly, convince you that I am serious about building a life together." Clara smiled, so wide it almost hurt. "I am already convinced, but I will not object to proper courting." He rented a room at the boarding house to preserve appearances, but he spent most of his time at Clara's cabin, helping with whatever needed doing. He chopped wood for her winter supply, repaired the warped floorboards, rehung her door so it sat straight. He accompanied her on her rounds when she went to treat patients, and she valued his steady presence, the way he could calm nervous children and reassure worried parents. People began to see them as a unit, Clara and Isaac, and the town's acceptance of their courtship was surprisingly easy. "You are good for her," Mrs. Henderson, who ran the general store, told Isaac one day when he was buying supplies. "Clara has been alone too long. She acts like she does not need anyone, but everyone needs someone." Isaac could not have agreed more. As September turned to October, as the aspen leaves fell and the first real snows dusted the peaks, he and Clara grew closer. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He told her about the loneliness of ranch life, about nights under the stars with only cattle for company. She told him about the weight of being responsible for people's health, about the fear that she would make a mistake that could cost a life. They shared their secrets, their hopes, their fears, and with each revelation, the bond between them strengthened. He courted her with wildflowers gathered from the high meadows, with poems read aloud by lamplight, with dances at the town socials where he held her as close as propriety allowed, and wished it was closer still. He courted her with actions, showing up when she needed help, supporting her work, treating her mind and skills with the respect they deserved. And Clara, who had been alone for so long, bloomed under his attention like her herbs in sunshine. On a crisp October evening, with snow threatening in the heavy clouds, Isaac walked Clara home from a dinner at Tom and Mary's house, where they had been warmly welcomed and thoroughly questioned about their intentions. Mary had whispered to Clara that she approved wholeheartedly, that Isaac was a good man who would treat her right. Tom had clapped Isaac on the shoulder and told him not to be a fool, to marry the woman before she realized she was too good for him. Now, standing on Clara's porch with frost glittering in the moonlight, Isaac pulled a small box from his pocket. His hands were shaking slightly, and Clara felt her breath stop in her throat. "I know we have not known each other long," Isaac said. "Only 3 months since I rode into town with Tom bleeding. But Clara, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are everything I did not know I was looking for. You are brilliant and kind and strong, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy who loves you more than he thought possible?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling as she said, "Yes. Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." The ring was simple silver, like the necklace, with a small sapphire the color of Colorado skies. It fit perfectly, and as Isaac slid it onto her finger, Clara felt something settle in her chest, a rightness that she had never experienced before. This was her future, this man with his calloused hands and honest eyes and heart big enough to hold all her dreams. They were married in November, a simple ceremony in the small church with most of Bonanza in attendance. Tom was Isaac's best man, standing proudly with his arm fully healed thanks to Clara's care. Mary stood up with Clara, dabbing at her eyes throughout the ceremony. Doc Hendricks, who had returned from the mining camps and heard all about Clara's healing work, attended with genuine pleasure, and afterward told Isaac he was a lucky man. "I know," Isaac said, unable to take his eyes off his new wife, radiant in a dress of deep blue that matched her ring. They spent their wedding night in Clara's cabin, which would be their home until Isaac could build something bigger. He carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, and then he set her down gently and just looked at her for a long moment. "My wife," he said wonderingly. "Clara Sullivan." "Your wife," she confirmed, and reached up to pull him down for a kiss. He was gentle with her, patient and careful, and Clara found herself grateful for his consideration even as she pulled him closer, wanting more. They learned each other slowly, with touches and whispers and shared laughter, And when they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, two halves finding their whole. Afterward, lying wrapped in each other's arms, Isaac said, "I want to build you a real house. Something big enough for a family. Nothing fancy, but solid and warm and ours. We can do that in the spring," Clara said, tracing patterns on his chest. "Right now, this is perfect." Winter settled over Bonanza, deep and cold and quiet, and Clara and Isaac built their life together in the warm cocoon of the cabin. She continued her healing work, and he helped her, learning the properties of herbs, assisting with difficult cases, using his strength when it was needed. He took on work around town, putting his skills to use, helping repair buildings, shoeing horses, whatever was needed. The money was good, and more importantly, it kept him in Bonanza with his wife. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, playing cards, talking about the future. Isaac taught Clara to play chess, and she proved to be a quick study, soon beating him more often than not. She taught him more about healing, about the delicate balance of herbs and dosage, and he proved to have an unexpected gift for it, his large hands surprisingly deft. Christmas came, and they celebrated with Tom and Mary and their children, with the community that had welcomed them both. Clara gave Isaac a warm coat she had sewn herself, lined with fur traded from a trapper. Isaac gave Clara a set of medical instruments ordered special from Denver, the finest quality available. But the real gift was each other, the joy of waking up together every morning, of building a life side by side. In January, Clara realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to be certain before telling Isaac. When she finally did, on a snowy evening with the wind howling outside, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He shouted with joy, picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down and apologized for being too rough. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Clara laughed. "But yes, you are going to be a father." Isaac's eyes were suspiciously bright as he pulled her close. "A father," he repeated. "Clara, you have made me the happiest man alive." As winter began to loosen its grip and hints of spring appeared, Isaac started planning the house he had promised. He drew sketches by lamplight, showing Clara his ideas, incorporating her suggestions. It would have a large kitchen for her healing work, a room that could serve as a clinic, plenty of space for the family they hoped to have. They chose a spot on the 5 acres Isaac had quietly purchased just outside town, land that would give them room to grow. In March, as mud season made the roads nearly impassable, Clara delivered her first baby as a married woman, a healthy girl who came squalling into the world with impressive lungs. The mother, a young woman named Sarah whose husband worked in the mines, clutched Clara's hand afterward and said, "Thank you. Everyone said to wait for Doc Hendricks, but I knew you would take care of me." Isaac, who had waited outside with the nervous father, drove Clara home afterward and held her as she cried quiet tears of relief and joy. "You are amazing," he told her. "The way you handle these situations, the way people trust you. I am in awe of you, Clara. We are a team," she said. "I could not do this without your support." By April, spring had truly arrived, and Isaac began building their house with the help of Tom and several other men from town. Clara watched her home take shape, frame by frame, wall by wall, and marveled at how far she had come. A year ago, she had been alone, managing but not truly thriving. Now she had a husband who loved her, a baby on the way, a future bright with possibility. The house was finished in early June, just weeks before Clara's due date. It was beautiful, larger than she had expected, with wide windows that let in light and views of the mountains. The clinic room had shelves for her herbs and medicines, a comfortable examination table Isaac had built himself, everything organized exactly as she needed. Their bedroom was upstairs, private and cozy, with a cradle already waiting beside the bed. They moved in on a warm June day, and that night, lying in their new bed with the windows open to let in the mountain air, Isaac said, "This is just the beginning, you know. We are going to fill this house with life and love and laughter. We are going to grow old here together, watch our children grow up, maybe meet our grandchildren if we are lucky." "That sounds perfect," Clara said, her hand resting on her swollen belly where their baby moved restlessly. 2 weeks later, on a morning when the sun rose clear and bright, Clara's labor began. Isaac was calm, or at least appeared calm, though she could see the worry in his eyes. He sent for Mary, who had delivered 3 children of her own, and together they helped Clara through the long hours. Doc Hendricks stopped by to check on things, but he quickly saw that Clara and Mary had everything under control. "You are in good hands," he told Isaac. "That wife of yours knows more about birthing than I do." It was evening when the baby finally came, a boy with a strong cry and his father's dark hair. Isaac held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, and Clara watched her husband fall completely in love. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered. "You are perfect." "Thank you, Clara. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas after the foreman whose injury had brought them together, with the middle name James after Clara's father. Tom himself was deeply honored when they told him, and Mary cried happy tears. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Baby Thomas was healthy and hungry, keeping them both up at nights but rewarding them with smiles and giggles that made the exhaustion worthwhile. Clara continued her healing work, balancing it with motherhood, and Isaac supported her completely, taking over baby care when she was called away to a patient, never complaining about the demands on her time. "Your work is important," he told her more than once. "I knew what I was marrying into, and I would not change a thing." Tom Brewster became a regular visitor, often bringing his own children to play with young Thomas as he grew. "That boy would not be here if not for you," Tom told Clara one day, gesturing to where Isaac was playing with Thomas in the yard. "You saved my life, and by doing that, you gave Isaac his family. I will never forget that." As Thomas grew from baby to toddler, Clara and Isaac settled into the rhythms of their life together. She taught him more about healing, and he proved skilled enough that he could handle simple cases when she was unavailable. He taught her about the land, about reading weather and seasons, about the satisfaction of growing things. They worked together on expanding her garden, adding medicinal plants alongside the vegetables, creating a space that was both beautiful and functional. 2 years after Thomas was born, Clara found herself pregnant again. This time, she recognized the signs immediately and told Isaac as soon as she was certain. His joy was just as profound as it had been the first time, his care just as attentive. "A big family," he said, his hand resting on her still flat belly. "That is what I have always wanted. Children running through this house, filling it with noise and chaos and love." "Careful what you wish for," Clara teased, but she wanted it too, wanted the big family she had never had growing up as an only child after her brother died. Their daughter was born in the spring, an easier labor than the first, and they named her Catherine Grace, though she was called Kate from the start. She had Clara's lighter coloring and Isaac's gray eyes, and Thomas was utterly fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. Life continued to unfold in seasons and cycles. Isaac's ranch prospered, his careful management and Tom's expertise building a reputation for quality cattle. Clara's healing practice grew as well, with people coming from surrounding towns when they heard about the woman who could cure what others could not. Doc Hendricks, growing older, began referring more and more patients to her, publicly acknowledging her skill. When Thomas was 5 and Kate was 3, Clara delivered another baby, another boy they named Samuel Isaac. And 2 years after that, when Clara was 32 and beginning to think their family was complete, a surprise pregnancy brought them a third son, Daniel Andrew. Their house, which had seemed so large when they first moved in, now felt perfectly sized, filled with the sound of children's laughter, of running feet, of arguments and adventures and all the chaos of a young family. Isaac proved to be a wonderful father, patient and playful, teaching his sons to ride and his daughter that she could do anything her brothers could do. Clara balanced motherhood and healing work with the skill she brought to everything, and if she was sometimes exhausted, she was also deeply, profoundly happy. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac took Clara on a picnic to the spot where he had built her root cellar, still in use, still perfect after all these years. The children were with Tom and Mary for the afternoon, giving them rare time alone. "You remember?" Isaac asked, pouring her wine, offering her the food he had packed. "That week that changed everything. I remember a desperate cowboy who rode into town with his foreman bleeding," Clara said. "I remember thinking he had kind eyes, even though he was scared. I remember a woman who took charge when everyone else was panicking," Isaac replied, "who knew exactly what to do and did it without hesitation. I fell in love with you in that moment, I think, though I did not realize it until later. You fell in love with me because I saved Tom's arm." Clara asked, amused. "I fell in love with you because you were everything I did not know I needed," Isaac corrected. "Brave and skilled and so beautiful it hurt to look at you. And then I got to know you and I fell even deeper. Every day, Clara, I fall in love with you again every single day." She kissed him, long and sweet, tasting wine and love and the years they had built together. "Best week of my life," she said, "building that root cellar, getting to know you, realizing I had found my future." "Our future," Isaac corrected, "and we are only getting started." More years passed, marked by the growth of their children and the deepening of their love. Thomas grew tall and serious, interested in both ranching and healing, spending time with both his father and mother learning their trades. Kate was fierce and fearless, riding as well as any boy, helping Clara with patience and showing an aptitude for healing that made Clara's heart swell. Samuel was the dreamer, always with his nose in a book, fascinated by everything. And Daniel, the baby, was pure mischief and joy, keeping them all on their toes. Clara's reputation as a healer continued to grow, and when Doc Hendricks finally retired at 75, he publicly named Clara as his successor. She still could not call herself a doctor officially, but everyone in Bonanza and the surrounding area came to her for medical care, and her opinion was respected as much as any physician's. Isaac's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, but he never forgot where he came from or the debt he owed to Clara's herbs and healing knowledge. Tom remained his foreman until age slowed him down, and then Tom's oldest son took over, the tradition continuing. Isaac and Tom remained close friends, their families intertwined, the bond forged in crisis and sealed in mutual respect. On a crisp autumn evening when Clara was 40 and Isaac was 42, they sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. The children were inside, Thomas helping the younger ones with their lessons, Kate preparing dinner with a skill that rivaled her mother's. The house was full of life and noise and love, everything they had dreamed of and more. "You ever think about that day?" Isaac asked, his arm around Clara's shoulders. "The day I rode into town, sometimes," Clara admitted. "I think about how easily we might have missed each other. If Tom had not been injured, if you had not needed help, if I had not been brave enough to step forward." "Fate," Isaac said. "It had to be. We were meant to find each other." "Maybe," Clara said, "or maybe we were just lucky. Either way, I am grateful. For Tom's recovery, for your root cellar, for every moment since then." "The root cellar," Isaac laughed. "That old thing is still standing, still useful." "Best week's work I ever did. The best trade I ever made," Clara agreed. "Healing herbs for a root cellar, and I got a husband and a lifetime of love as well." Isaac pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head. "I would build you 1,000 root cellars if you asked. Build you anything, give you everything. You saved more than Tom's arm that day, Clara. You saved me too. Gave me a reason to be something more than just a man with cattle and land. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving." Clara turned to kiss him properly, this man who had kept every promise, who had loved her through 10 years of marriage and would love her through 50 more if they were blessed with the time. "We saved each other," she said. "That is what love is, I think. Not one person rescuing another, but two people choosing to build something together." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of shared life. Inside, they could hear their children's voices, Thomas reading aloud, Kate singing while she cooked, the younger boys arguing over something trivial. It was the sound of family, of home, of everything they had built from a single week of herbs and healing, and a cowboy's determination to repay a debt. The years continued to unfold with their particular grace and challenges. When Thomas turned 18, he surprised them both by announcing his intention to study medicine formally back east. Clara's success had inspired him, but he wanted the formal education she had been denied, wanted to return to Bonanza as a real doctor who could work alongside his mother. "You have taught me so much," he told Clara, "but I want to learn more, bring back new knowledge, new techniques. Together, we could do so much for this community." Clara cried, touched beyond words, and Isaac held her that night as she processed the bittersweet reality of her oldest child leaving. "He will come back," Isaac assured her. "We raised him to value this place, these people. He is not leaving for good, just growing." Kate, at 16, was already helping Clara with difficult cases, her steady hands and calm demeanor making her a natural healer. But she surprised them by also wanting to learn ranching, spending long days with Isaac and Tom's son, proving herself as capable as any man. "Why should I have to choose?" she asked when Clara questioned her. "You taught me I could be anything I wanted, so I want to be everything." Samuel, the dreamer, announced his intention to become a teacher, to bring education to the small towns and mining camps that had none. "People need more than just physical healing," he said. "They need their minds engaged, their children educated. I can do that." And Daniel, true to form, declared he was going to be an adventurer and see the world before settling down. "I will come back," he promised. "But first, I want to know what else is out there." Clara and Isaac supported all of them, though it was hard to watch their children grow and scatter. But they had raised them to be independent, to pursue their dreams, and they could not regret that now. As their children left one by one to pursue their own paths, Clara and Isaac rediscovered each other in new ways. They took trips together, visiting Denver and even traveling back east once to see Thomas graduate from medical school. They worked side by side, their partnership as strong as ever, finding new rhythms now that it was just the two of them again. Thomas did return, bringing with him a wealth of knowledge and a quiet determination to serve the community where he had grown up. He married a nurse he had met in Boston, a practical woman named Helen who fit into Bonanza life like she had been born to it. Together, they opened a proper clinic, with Clara's herbal knowledge complementing Thomas's formal medical training. It was everything Clara had dreamed of, seeing her son carry on and expand her work. Kate married a neighboring rancher, combining their land with Isaac's and creating one of the largest spreads in Colorado. She managed both the cattle operation and a thriving medicinal herb business, using Clara's garden as the foundation for something even larger. She had 3 daughters who grew up riding horses and learning healing, strong women who took after their mother and grandmother. Samuel became a circuit teacher, riding between mining camps and small towns, bringing education to children who would otherwise have none. He married late, a widow with 2 children of her own, and they built a life centered on service and learning. Daniel did travel the world, sending letters from places Clara and Isaac could barely imagine. But he too came home eventually, bringing with him a wife from San Francisco and stories that entertained his nephews and nieces for hours. He took over managing the business side of the ranch, his worldly experience proving invaluable. Through it all, Clara and Isaac remained each other's constant. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, mourned when Tom Brewster passed quietly in his sleep at 72, rejoiced when grandchildren were born. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair, lines marking their faces, but the love between them never dimmed. On their 30th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the house Isaac had built all those years ago. It was a joyful chaos of multiple generations, the house filled to bursting with family. After the celebration, when most of the guests had left and only their children remained, Thomas raised a glass. "To my parents," he said, "who built something extraordinary from a single act of healing and a week of hard work. You taught us what love looks like, what commitment means, what it takes to build a life worth living. Thank you." Clara, with Isaac's hand in hers, looked around at the faces of their children, now adults with families of their own, and felt a profound sense of completion. This was her legacy, not just the healing she had done, but the family she and Isaac had created, the love they had nurtured and grown. "To your mother," Isaac said, his voice still strong despite his years, "who saved my foreman's arm 30 years ago and in doing so saved my life. Everything good in my life traces back to that day, to her skill and compassion and courage. I love you, Clara Sullivan, just as much today as I did when I first kissed you on your porch all those years ago." "More," Clara corrected softly. "We love each other more because now we know. We know what we have built together, what we have survived, what we have created. Young love is beautiful, but this, what we have now, this is everything." The years continued their steady march. Clara and Isaac both worked less as age slowed them, but they never stopped entirely. Clara still saw patients who came to her door, still tended her garden, still taught anyone who wanted to learn about healing herbs. Isaac still rode out to check on the cattle, still worked alongside his children and grandchildren, still built things with his hands when the mood struck him. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by family, 14 grandchildren and counting, the house that Isaac had built still standing strong. The root cellar he had constructed that first week was still in use, still perfectly functional, a testament to the quality of his work and the foundation they had built. When Clara was 60 and Isaac was 62, they took a quiet afternoon to visit all the places that had marked their life together. The spot in town where Isaac had first arrived with Tom bleeding. The site of Clara's first cabin, now occupied by a young family. The place where he had built the root cellar. Each location held memories, layers of their shared history. "We have had a good life," Clara said as they sat where the root cellar still stood, now surrounded by Kate's expanded herb garden. Better than I ever dreamed possible when I was a lonely young woman trying to make a place for myself in this town. The best life, Isaac agreed. And we are not done yet. I plan to love you for at least another 40 years. Clara laughed, the sound still bright despite her age. That would make us both over 100. I am not sure that is realistic, my love. Watch me, Isaac said, and kissed her with the passion of a much younger man. They were blessed with more years, years marked by the continued growth of their family and community. Thomas's clinic became a respected medical practice, with patients coming from across the state. Kate's ranch and herb business thrived, providing employment and prosperity for the region. Samuel's educational efforts resulted in schools being built in several mining towns, his legacy measured in the children he had taught to read and write. Daniel's business acumen kept the family finances stable and growing. Clara and Isaac became the matriarch and patriarch of not just their family, but of Bonanza itself, respected elders whose wisdom was sought on everything from medical questions to land disputes to matters of the heart. They wore their age with grace, supporting each other through the inevitable aches and ailments, never complaining, always grateful for another day together. On a spring morning, when Clara was 68 and Isaac was 70, they sat on their porch watching the sunrise, something they had done thousands of times before. Isaac's hand, still strong despite the arthritis that sometimes pained him, held Clara's, the simple gold bands they had worn for nearly 45 years glinting in the early light. "You remember what you said to me, that day you proposed?" Clara asked. "You said you would love me until your last breath." "I remember," Isaac said, "and I meant it, still mean it." "Good," Clara said, "because I intend to hold you to that promise." Isaac died peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, at 73, with Clara beside him as she had been for nearly half a century. The whole town mourned, turning out for a funeral that celebrated a life well lived, a man who had built something lasting. Clara stood strong through it, supported by her children and grandchildren, dry-eyed during the service because she knew Isaac would not want tears. But that night, alone in the house they had filled with so much love, she let herself cry, grieving the loss of her partner, her love, her other half. Thomas found her in the morning, still sitting in Isaac's chair, and he held his mother while she finally broke. "He loved you so much," Thomas said. "We all saw it every day of our lives. What you had was extraordinary, Mother." "I know," Clara whispered. "And I was blessed beyond measure to have it." The grief was profound, but Clara did not let it destroy her. She had too much still to do, too many people who depended on her. She continued her healing work, finding solace in helping others, in using the knowledge she and Isaac had accumulated together. She spent time with her grandchildren, passing on stories of their grandfather, making sure they knew the kind of man he had been. On what would have been their 50th anniversary, Clara's children gathered with her at the house. They had wanted to take her somewhere to distract her, but she insisted on staying home. Instead, she took them all to the root cellar, still standing after all these years. "This is where it really began," she told them. "Your father built this for me in a single week, determined to repay a debt he thought he owed. But what he gave me was so much more than a place to store herbs. He gave me his heart, his life, his unwavering support and love. Everything good in my life came from that week, from his determination to do right by me." "He loved building things for you," Kate said, her own eyes damp. "Every project, whether it was this cellar or the house or the furniture he made, he built with love." "He built our family with love," Thomas added. "Everything he did was for us, for you, for creating something that would last." Clara touched the solid wooden door, the leather hinges Isaac had crafted, the careful workmanship that had endured for 5 decades. "I will join him soon enough," she said quietly. "But not yet. I still have work to do, and he would want me to finish it." She lived another 7 years, active and engaged until nearly the end. She taught her granddaughter, Kate's middle daughter who had inherited Clara's healing gift, everything she knew, passing on not just knowledge but philosophy, the understanding that healing was about more than just curing disease. She saw 2 more great-grandchildren born, held them in her arms and marveled at the continuation of life. When Clara finally passed, at 78, it was quietly in her sleep, in the house Isaac had built, in the bed they had shared. Thomas, who had been checking on her daily, found her with a smile on her face, her hand resting on Isaac's pillow as if reaching for him even in death. They buried her beside Isaac, on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains they had both loved. The headstone, simple and elegant, read, "Clara Greenfield Sullivan, 1854–1932. Healer, wife, mother. Her herbs saved many, but her love saved most of all." The family she and Isaac had created continued to thrive, their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren carrying on the legacies they had built. The clinic Thomas ran with his daughter became one of the most respected medical practices in Colorado. Kate's ranch and herb business expanded across 3 states, providing employment for hundreds. Samuel's schools educated generations of children. Daniel's children became leaders in business and community service. But more than the tangible legacies, Clara and Isaac had created something intangible, but even more valuable. They had shown what love could build, what partnership could create, how 2 people determined to support each other could weather anything and create something extraordinary. Every marriage in the family, every partnership, was measured against theirs, not as an impossible standard, but as proof of what was possible. The root cellar stood for another 50 years before time finally claimed it, the wood rotting, the earth reclaiming what Isaac had carved from it. But by then it had served its purpose many times over, had stored herbs that healed thousands, food that sustained a family, and most importantly, had been the symbol of where a great love story began. On the land where the root cellar had stood, Kate's daughter, the one Clara had trained, planted a garden of healing herbs, each plant carefully chosen and tended. In the center, she placed a simple stone marker. Here, a cowboy built a root cellar for the woman he loved. From that act of service, a family grew, a town prospered, and countless lives were healed. Love builds. Love endures. Love saves. And in Bonanza, Colorado, the story of Clara and Isaac became legend, told to courting couples and newlyweds as an example of what real love looked like. Not the dramatic passion of novels, though they had had plenty of that, but the steady, determined, everyday choice to build something together, to support each other's dreams, to create a life of meaning and purpose and joy. Her healing herbs had saved his foreman's arm, and the cowboy had built her a root cellar that week. But what they had really built was so much more. They had built a life, a family, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. And in the end, that was the truest healing of all.